Have you ever had a conversation with someone and then walked away, thinking that something about that person felt off, but you couldn't explain? Maybe their words sounded perfectly normal. They smiled, they acted friendly, and yet something didn't match. Believe me, people are constantly revealing themselves, but not through some dramatic action, not through some dramatic words, and not necessarily through some confessions. Sometimes it's just a 2-second change on their face, the way they sit when a certain person walks into the room, the questions they completely avoid answering, or the difference between what they say and what their body is quietly revealing. And once you learn what to look for, people always become very easier for you to understand. Now, before we go into the real stuff, if you enjoy psychology that helps you understand people, not just some random textbook theory, but understanding real people, why people do what they do, why they react the way they do, and why you think certain thoughts, this is your home. Smash that subscribe button and join the community. Because here we are gradually building a community of people who want to understand people better, who want to understand situations better, who wants to understand behavior, and who are able to pick those minor things most people miss. So if that's your kind of community, welcome. Now let's get into it. I want to start by telling you that the most important part of a conversation is not always necessarily what people say. It's what slips through when they're trying to control what they say. And that's where we start today. The signals that gives you clues without them knowing that you know. Signal number one, the eyes. Now listen, the eyes don't lie, but they do leak a lot of information. But let's clear something up first. The eyes are not a magical lie detector. Someone looking away does not automatically mean they are lying, but changes in eye behavior can reveal changes in emotional state. Think about someone who is normally naturally comfortable talking to you. Then suddenly you bring up a specific topic, or you bring up a specific person, or you bring up a specific question, and their eye contact changes. They might suddenly look down. They might suddenly start scanning the room. Their eyes may become wider, or perhaps they stare at you so intense just because they are trying to make you understand that they are confident. But again, the most important thing to look for is not just one movement, it's to look for that change from their normal behavior. And that's the part most people miss. Then one day you ask, what happened between you and Sarah? And all of a sudden, he starts looking everywhere except you. Don't immediately think that he's lying, but note that there is something about that question that changed his behavior. Something in that question changed his emotional state. And that's what is important. You are not trying to become a human lie detector. You're simply looking from deviations from their baseline. And that brings us to something that's more harder to fake, which leads us to point number two, posture. The posture is magical because it usually tells you what people don't want to say. People can control their words. They can rehearse their answers. They can smile. They can say things like, I'm totally fine. Meanwhile, their body is basically saying the opposite. Watch what happens to someone's posture depending on who they are around. Someone walks into the room and suddenly they sit up straighter. Someone else walks in and they shrink in their chair. Someone starts talking about a topic they're interested in, and all of a sudden they become animated. They lean forward. They start gesturing. That's information because your body responds to things your conscious mind doesn't always bother explaining. Here's a simple experiment. Next time you're in a group conversation, don't just listen. Watch who is leaning towards whom. Watch who turns their entire body towards someone. Watch who keeps their feet pointed towards the door. Watch who suddenly becomes stiff when a particular person is talking. And here you're not looking for a single universal meaning. You're looking for patterns. Because sometimes someone's mouth says, I love being here. But their entire body is saying at the same time that I'd rather be somewhere else. And then there are things people don't even say at all. And those ones can be very revealing. Which leads us to point number three, the unspoken words. Pay attention to the words people avoid because this one is underrated. Most people focus on what people say, but I want you to start focusing on the words people are avoiding or on the things people are avoiding to say. For example, ask someone if they do actually want this job, and instead of answering, they give you 5 minutes about salary, about the office, about the commute to the job. They talk completely about different things. Ask another person, are you happy in your relationship? And their response will be that she's a really good person. Notice they answered completely different questions. She's a good person. It's not the same like, yes, I'm happy. And this happens constantly. People often answer the question they are comfortable answering rather than answering the question you ask. So when you're talking to someone next time, Listen to when they change the topic. Listen to when they redirect the question. Listen to when the answer becomes strangely detailed. Listen to when they become very defensive for something you did not even accuse them of doing. And again, none of this prove deception, but they give you something important, a reason to pay close attention. And sometimes the giveaway happens faster than words can even be formed, which takes us to number 4, which is to watch the split second expression. You know that moment when someone hears something and for some few seconds, their facial expression changes, then they immediately recover. That's worth noticing. Imagine you tell someone that you got a promotion. They smile and they say congratulations. But for a fraction of a second, their face drops. Then the smile comes back. Don't immediately conclude they're jealous. You don't know that. Maybe they're exhausted. Maybe they're dealing with something completely unrelated. But that tiny change can tell you that there is more emotion here than the words can show. And that's the real value of micro expression. Not mind reading, but emotional detection. Someone might say they're excited while looking uncomfortable. Someone might say they're angry while showing brief amusement. Someone might say they're indifferent while their face reacts immediately to the subject. The mistake people make is that they notice one expression and then immediately build an entire story around it. Don't do that. Look for clusters: eye behavior, voice, posture, word choice, facial expression. When several signals point to the same direction, your confidence will increase. And then there is one final signal that's very interesting because it separates real confidence from performative confidence, which leads us to signal number 5: confidence versus the mask. Real confidence doesn't usually need to announce itself. And I know you've probably met that person who walks into the room and start trying to prove who they are. They name drop. They talk over people. They constantly tell everyone how successful they are. They need to win every disagreement. And that's not necessarily confidence. Most of the time, it's performance of confidence. Now, compare that with someone who is genuinely comfortable with themselves. They don't need everyone to agree with them, and they can admit that they don't know. They can take criticism without falling apart. They don't have to dominate every conversation, and they don't even seem desperate to convince you that they're important. And that's a very powerful thing to watch, because insecurity does not always look insecure. Sometimes insecurity looks like arrogance. Sometimes fear looks like aggression. Sometimes desperation looks like excessive confidence. So don't just listen to someone's claim about themselves. Watch how they behave when their self-image gets challenged. And that's where the mask gets harder to maintain. Now hear me out. The most important thing to take from this video is not to turn these signals into a weapon. Reading people does not mean walking into a room and thinking that you know exactly what each and everyone there thinks, because you don't. Neither does anyone know. One behavior almost means nothing by itself. Someone avoiding eye contact could be that they are lying, or maybe they could be shy, or maybe they could be tired, or maybe they could be distracted, or maybe they could be uncomfortable. That's why the smartest way to read people is to know their baseline, is to notice the changes, is to recognize the pattern, and then to factor in the context. What are they normally like? That's knowing the baseline. What's different now? That's noticing the change. Does it happen repeatedly? That's recognizing a pattern. What else is happening around them? That's factoring in the context. And that's how you become better at reading people without being paranoid. Because the truth is, people don't always reveal themselves based on what they tell you. They reveal themselves through patterns, the way they react when they're uncomfortable, the questions they avoid, the people they become different around, the emotions that flash across their face before they regain control, and the difference between who they claim to be and how they react when no one is watching. So next time when you meet someone, don't obsess over every little movement. Just slow down. Listen a little bit more carefully, watch a little bit more closely, and give people enough time to reveal their patterns. Because sometimes, most of the times, people don't have to tell you who they are, but they definitely show you who they are. Now tell me in the comment section which ones do you think I missed. Your opinion matters. And don't forget to click on this video on the screen, because we are just getting started. Thank you for being here. Smash that subscribe button, share, comment. Let's build this community of real people who just wants to understand other people. See you in the next one. Copy that.